All right, joining me today, I have Todd Caldecott. Todd, how are you doing today?
Doing well, thanks.
Awesome. I really appreciate you doing this. I got a couple questions for you.
Sure.
First, I kind of wanted to start off and ask the question, who are you? Tell everyone a little bit about yourself. That's a very broad question.
It is. Who am I? Who are any of us?
Yeah,
I think it's a process of discovery and unfolding, isn't it?
absolutely.
Um, well, I mean, practical conventional terms, I'm a clinical herbalist or a medical herbalist. I've been doing that for like professionally for 28 years, but involved in the field for more than 30. And it's also allied with the practice of Ayurvedic medicine. I've been practicing that just as long as well. And I also practice nutrition, clinical nutrition. And so I have a clinical practice. I also make medicines for my patients. And I do a fair amount of teaching. I've written some books. So I've just kind of created a little niche life for me, being a herbalist.
Yeah,
And pretty happy doing that. And I live
absolutely.
in Canada. I'm Canadian.
Nice. I actually didn't know that prior to doing a little bit of extra research on you. So that was definitely a little interesting fact there.
I mean,
Yeah,
that's where I got my start. I got my start in Vancouver,
awesome.
Hollywood North, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me a little bit about your acting career. You left the industry quite a long time ago. So I just
Hmm.
kind of want to kind of shine a little bit light on that, then obviously get into where you're at today, because that's what's important. What got you into your acting career when you first started?
I wasn't a very good student. Just regular studies didn't interest me all that much, but I enjoyed theater. I was good at it, and it allowed me a high degree of freedom in high school. Like, it was always a way to get out of class or do something. Like, 'cause, oh, we're setting up lights for this show, we're doing this, we're doing that. We also had kind of commandeered the entire auditorium for our own ends, and so we could have had quite a little scene in there. So anyway, I just got into it after high school. I was in a festival of the local region, and we won all the awards. And I had an agent come downstairs afterwards and say, "Call me in the morning," and I did. And then that was it. Then I just started auditioning, and that was early days in Hollywood North when it was just first starting.
Awesome. I did just do an entire episode introducing someone to fear for the very first time,
Okay.
which is actually how I reached out to you. When I was younger, I really enjoyed thriller movies,
Mm.
and there was just something that I liked a lot about the movie. You played Gary in the film, and I feel like he's a very underused character. Um, I don't know why. I just felt like every scene that you were in seemed to be pretty important. And, you played the best friend of,
Mhm.
of course, Reese Witherspoon and Alyssa Milano. I just had a couple questions about that since I did do a whole episode on that.
Okay. All
Uh,
right.
were there any memorable moments on the set of Fear, and what drew you to the project itself?
I mean, nothing drew me. I was an actor auditioning for a role,
Mhm.
and it was a feature. So, as an actor, a feature film, that's a nice little paycheck. And
Oh yeah.
uh, yeah, I auditioned and a few times and got the role, and that was it. I mean, it was just a professional job. It didn't
Sure.
really have much backstory. I think that would have maybe been interesting, but that's not really what the movie was about. I mean, it's not about Gary.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
a,
No.
just a device to
Sure.
some violent end, right? So, yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I was on the set for like 2 weeks, so it wasn't all that long, right?
Yeah.
And I think I connected more with Mark
Okay.
and some of his friends than I did with Reese per se. She was really young, like she was like I can't remember. I think she was a teenager.
Yeah.
So, I think yeah. So I think it was an intense experience for her.
So you connected a little bit more with Mark and everything. Your character meets quite the awful demise in the woods, and
Yes, in the wood.
yeah, man, he snaps your neck. The girl Brittany that I introduced the episode to,
Okay.
she's kind of like, "Whoa!" Like he's like, "I really liked him," and then Mark just came along and snapped your neck.
He did.
He did.
This is a face
Um,
you want to kill. That's why I'm
no,
yeah.
no, no. Were there any fun memories you had from set, or was it just more or less getting to and from and getting that paycheck and getting your first, really big feature?
Well, the thing about Mark breaking my neck was funny because we filmed that several times. And when you're filming something that's fast, like running or driving, you always cheat that, and so you're actually going really slow.
Yeah.
So each scene, I had to run,
Mm.
but as slow as I was going, Mark could never catch up to me. Like I was going so slow. And then after every take, he was, he smoked a cigarette. So it was
That's
quite
awesome.
funny because
Oh yeah.
he did that like, I don't know, like maybe 4 or 5 takes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
smoking. I think that was the main reason he was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was like, wait a minute.
As a
Uh
young man, it was like cigarette, being an actor and smoking cigarettes.
yeah. Yeah, in the in the final version of the film, it looks like he's running so fast through the woods, and you just know, you're just like, oh well, there goes
Oh,
Gary.
dude, he would
Is
never have caught me. He
yeah,
wouldn't, I would have been long gone.
gotcha. Hey, hey, could have been a completely different ending for you
Would have
then.
been completely different. And
To
Gary
him.
could have come back and been like, "Wow, I just had an experience with this dude. You should
Yeah,
stay away from him. He's
yeah.
trouble."
Would have been Fear 2 featuring all about Gary. So
Yeah, could have been.
missed opportunity. So, transitioning from acting to a completely different field, was there a specific moment that made you realize that you no longer wanted to be in the industry?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think I enjoyed acting, but so much of acting is not actually acting. It's just sitting by the phone, waiting for the call, getting the audition, doing callbacks. Going on sets is sitting on set and doing nothing for most of the time, and then and then your scene comes up, or I mean, some days obviously it's if you're working and you're working all day, then that's great, but a lot of it is just sitting around waiting for your scene, right? So it's kind of boring, and then the projects are kind of stupid. I mean, they're just nothing I would watch personally. There are a lot of, especially it was coming up to Vancouver, was mostly like slasher picks and um and movie of the weeks and like television, sort of standard US television. I'm not particularly inspired by that. You don't really get much opportunity. I would have needed to have really invested in my career in a very different way. Like I should have gone to New York and done soaps, and then I could have moved to LA, but like honestly, as a Canadian, especially like what's happening now, I didn't really ever want to be down there for very long. Like it's okay. I mean, you guys are great, but
Right.
as a whole, it's a bit odd for me. It's culturally it doesn't and it was different back then too.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a different type of life. Like if you want to be successful as an actor, I think you got to want to be famous. You got to want that, right? It's going to be a
Mhm.
big part of what motivates you. Like I used to audition with Jason Priestley, and
Okay.
remember him, and I almost got a recurring role on Melrose Place. It was between
Oh,
me
wow.
and someone else for one of the parts there. But like when he'd audition, he'd like dress the part. He always dressed like James Dean, with the cigarettes rolled up in his sleeve, and he was like,
Yeah, yeah.
hey, and I was just like some weird, you know, kid. So I,
Mhm.
dressed in strange ways and didn't really manage the career. I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna, move to LA and get a penthouse apartment, and I don't know, it doesn't even occur to me. So, I think
Yeah.
that's a big part of why people want to do it. I,
Yeah.
I admire the actors that are able to carve out a niche such that they're able to express their skill, but it's pretty tiny percentage of actors because there's lots of great actors out there you know, that are classically trained or just have so much great experience and just don't get that exposure. And we just see the same people over and over again, and often they're just kind of terrible, but we just like, oh yeah, that's that guy again.
That's very true. You made a great point. There's so much talent out there, and unfortunately, we're kind of stuck in this sick cycle, reused, same actors over and over again. So I totally get that. I do get excited when I see more so independent films. As an
Mm,
adult, that's kind of where my interest really is. I
mhm,
think minimal budget and really doing character studies in whatever type of genre. I tend to like all types of genres,
mm,
but when you have that independent style and you don't really have that backbone of Hollywood kind of puppeteering everyone into making something specific that they
mm,
think you should be making. Those are definitely the things as an adult that I'm, more drawn to. And it's fun to go back and with my podcast. I introduce movies to people that have never seen them before, and I go back and watch these more nostalgic films,
mm,
such as Fear from my childhood. I rewatch them, and it is kind of the same thing. It's like, where's all the substance at? Do certain things that went on during Fear, do they hold up today? And that was
mm,
like our big topics of conversation Yeah, I completely agree with that. And it seems like you've definitely found something that you are very passionate about. So I definitely want to start talking about that. You traveled extensively, including India and Pakistan, where you
Mhm,
studied various healing traditions.
mhm.
What inspired you to pursue all of this in herbal medicine, and how has that experience shaped your worldview?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I went from being an actor to saying, fuck all this. And I sold all my shit and I got in a plane and I just went to India for a year. And it was 2000 bucks I had. And I thought, I figured out how much that was for each day. This is like 1990, right? So, but even still, it wasn't much, but it was a lot by Indian standards. But I went there and I proceeded to live like an Indian traveler, staying at only the Indian establishments and eating just Indian food at Indian places. And as you can imagine, I got pretty sick. So just did not
I
have the
bet.
microbiome to accommodate that. But I mean, there was like one episode where I was traveling with some musicians, some classically trained Carnatic musicians, and they were warming up one evening to prepare for a late night concert. And this grandma gave me this piece of apple, and I was like, oh, thanks. And it was South Indian. There's no apples grow there, so this apple had been imported all the way from northern India, and God knows how many hands had touched it by the time I got it, and I still had the peel on it. I had one slice, and I was, oh, thanks, that's great. And then well, a few hours
Sick.
later, I almost died. It was pretty bad, pretty bad.
Oh, damn.
I continued my travels and I had all kinds of great experiences, but I had was kind of sick for a lot of the time, like GI sick,
Hmm.
and had some respite in certain parts of the world. I learned how to eat to accommodate it. Like there's certain things I could eat and something couldn't. But I got back to Canada and I was feeling unwell still,
Sure.
and I sought lots of treatment and didn't find any help until I met a physician of Ayurveda, ironically, living in Canada, from India, living in Canada, who put me on a program, and a very simple program of just a dietary modification and some simple herbal supplements. And, like within a few weeks, I was significantly better. And that just I just embarked on a study of natural medicine from that point. I was so fascinated with it, how well it had treated my symptoms and how much better I was feeling. So I enrolled in a local program that was offering for the first time like a degree in herbal medicine. So I completed that program, and after 4 years, went to India and studied at a hospital in the south of India. I went back there. And then when I completed my training there, I came back to Canada and I started to practice and started to teach and just do all the stuff that herbalists do, which is usually quite a bit of stuff. Like we'll go harvesting in the forest, we'll see patients, we'll teach, we'll write. There's not many of us. Like we number in like just a few hundred probably in North America, but we have a very niche practice
Hmm.
and a pretty high level practice. Like we really know our stuff. And so I'm happy to be part of that community of like really committed folks that really hold this tradition with a lot of regard and expertise. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mentioned off camera how I started listening to your podcast, which we'll talk about in a minute as well. And listening to it, I was actually kind of like, wow, I guess I've never really thought about these types of things and, how the GI tract works and the herbal aspects of everything. And, it's common sense. It's in front of you. We understand that these things exist and we can treat our bodies way better. Listening to you talk about it, and obviously you're passionate about it as well, I do feel like it was pretty educational from what I listened to. I was excited to talk to you about this. And as I mentioned, I reached out to you because of fear, but kind of learning
Hmm.
about where you're at now, it is very interesting to hear this. Are there any projects with what you're doing now? Is there anything that you're working on? I know you had written a book. Is that correct?
I've written a few books
Okay.
and I've written so much course content. I've got 3 online courses people can study. There's one called Food is Medicine, another one on Ayurveda, another one on like clinical herbal medicine. So they're fairly kind of more uh, I would consider them beginner, but they're more like advanced beginner or like intermediate approach to the subject for people that want to be like clinicians or something. I just keep doing what I do. I'm heading out to Toronto to do a conference, and then in June, and I'm doing another one. And we're actually just putting the final touches on creating a little product line, which, the whole ethos of what we do is not mass market. Like when we make medicine, it's always done on a small scale, artisanal
Mm.
basis. It's like, I think you get some nice wine from a really old winery in France. I mean, they just make 1,000 bottles a year, and they're like, that's all we make. And, people pay a lot for that stuff. And so we aim to do that. So the medicines that I make are like much better than you'd ever get in a retail environment. But I only can make so much of them. But
Yeah.
we're just producing that, and then we'll be selling that to select groups of people. But formulas that I use in my practice for the last 25, 30 years that, for sinus problems or digestive problems or liver problems, it's exciting to help people. Like I've also used a lot of microdosing. Like I developed that about a decade ago. So well before there was any talk about microdosing, I was already using it in my practice and seeing just amazing results for people with depression, right? It's not psychoactive. You don't feel anything, but you definitely don't feel depressed. And it is probably the most effective thing that I've seen to treat depression. One thing I don't know can I ask how old you are?
Yeah, I'm 37.
37.
Yeah.
So like you're okay, you're millennial. So, but I noticed like with millennial and younger, like there's a lot of affective disorder. We say like depression or depression anxiety, and just I think a lot of it's inherently connected to digital media and like the community disconnect and loss of those kind of traditional, you don't want to say values, but it's more like connections and like a sense of being like connected to something, as part of a
Yeah.
continuity. We don't have that anymore, and I see a lot of depression and a lot of mental anguish out there. Yeah, I think for depression specifically, the microdosing can, if when used under proper guidance, can be super effective.
Yeah.
Not so much for anxiety, but for the depression part, for sure.
Sure. Yeah, you made some good points there. I do feel that with millennials, it does kind of seem like the topic of conversation is we do kind of lean into that depression conversation a lot more. You made a good point with we kind of grew up with out the digital age, and then halfway through our adolescence, we're thrown these cell phones and all these other electronic devices. And I mean, of course, it's a part of our daily lives, but we kind of knew what it was like before it, and now here we are. Every week, I feel like technology just seems to grow bigger and stronger and smarter.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. Important that we push back, and that's one thing I love about what I do is that the medicine that I prepare and I use, it's like right there. It's growing from the earth. So to engage with it is you have to remove all that stuff, and you are just present with that sacrifice that the earth is making for your health, and you can honor that and then make a medicine, and it gets people better, and it's this whole kind of loop that sort of exists outside this digital realm that is so real. It's
Hmm.
so real and so important. And so I have colleagues that are like really into the herbs in a way. I mean, you probably think I'm a total nerd, and I have friends who are like, I think they're like fucking nerds, right? Like, I'm so I don't consider myself crazy, but I appreciate the therapeutic aspect of it and the opportunity to like connect to the earth, and that I think can come with bringing a lot more kind of subtle joy and like reconnecting to natural rhythms and cycles. Like I think that's the problem with the digital disruption is that we're just disconnected from the earth. And yeah, they say go out and touch grass, and so I touch herbs.
Yeah, there you go. It's funny that you're bringing all this up because it's definitely something that friends and I talk about, how we don't feel connected with things outside anymore because even when we are outside, and I'm guilty of it as well, filming things and doing all this stuff like that with my phone. And sometimes it is nice to just kind of cut all that stuff out and to know there's people much like yourself out there who are constantly connected and, t touching grass and touching herbs. It's good to know that people like you exist and you can kind of bring light to people who've kind of lost that. So I think what you're doing is some pretty inspiring stuff. And
Thank
like I
you.
said, just listening to you talk about it is, you're kind of like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I never really thought about that. We have lost that connection, especially my age and obviously even way younger. I'm a restaurant manager and a lot of my people that work for me, they're 18, 19, 20 years old. They're fresh out of high school and their whole life is just this, you know,
Yeah.
right in their phone. So thanks for bringing all that stuff up because I Couldn't agree more. But what can you
Hmm.
tell us about your podcast, The Whole Itself Remains?
Okay, so that's a funny title, I know, but it comes from it's a translation of a Upanishad, which is this ancient Indian poem. It goes back, it's like older than the Bible, and it goes. This is the whole, that too is the whole. Taking the whole from the whole itself remains. And here I'm not talking about something you fall into, but the whole of something, WHOLE, the whole. And so the orientation is towards that which is like a holistic perspective, like, how to understand something that is impossible to understand. There's another saying, it is not understood by those who understand, it is understood by those who do not. So it's like opening your mind to the extent where you can hold everything and it's an unknowable, infinite quality. Then now none of us can experience that fully. Like no one's claiming that. I'm not claiming that. But like we know it's there. And that is what truth is. And so we can aspire to that by looking for connections between things that we might normally miss, because that's the one thing about our modern life is that we don't see connections anymore, right?
Yeah,
So it's a linear experience. The thing is that we're so connected to everything. Like your microbiome, like you wouldn't exist without your microbiome, the bacteria in your body. Like they tease your nervous system and modulate your endocrine system and digest portions of your food and also infect you and kill you. So like we're engaged in this incredible, you know, web
hmm,
of influence, sphere of influence. And we need to like have an awareness of this holistic perspective. Like there's value in just treating, okay, there's this happening, I need to do this, and then it'll solve that. Right? It's a very linear approach. You can still employ a linear approach, but if you can also include like a holistic perspective, even like with people that have competing ideas, it's like you can like step back and be like, what is the thing that these people both need? Right? That they're not getting, and that come from that place as opposed to resolving the specific things, the points or whatever, right? So like it's being able to like shift in and out of focus in something and have an awareness that things are always more connected than we know, way more connected, and therefore we should be careful about how we proceed. There's actually a part of science. It's called the precautionary principle, and I would say that we have completely abandoned the precautionary principle, and we're doing so with AI right now. There's no caution. It's all about money,
yeah,
and that's it, right? And
yeah,
we know where that money's going. It's not going to us.
mm,
And it's pathological. And we're all suffering because of it. So I mean it's also about that, but it's not about that. So I talk about health issues. I talk about like last time I talked about menopause. I
mm,
talked about like small intestine bacterial overgrowth, and then I'm there's some local folks I'm going to interview. I'm going to interview a guy who works with men. Um, and I want to talk to him about men because he sees men in crisis, and I want to explore that because I think that's something that specifically is a big issue. We're going through the throes of that,
yeah,
and I mean no disrespect, but like Donald Trump is the worst role model for young men that could ever exist. And why is that? Why is he the president of the United States? Like that says something about men because it's
hmm,
mostly men voting for him. And then
yeah,
the women that go along with it or get convinced are just trying to make their partners feel good or, it's nuts. It's nuts. And so I think that's an issue. So yeah, it's like being able to see that, right? And then it's like I'm not trying to
sure.
judge anybody, like that's who they look up to, but it's like there's something missing then. What's the connection that's missing there for these men? So they can
Yeah,
start seeing that simple equation about like what's happening.
hmm, yeah. Well, I'm definitely very interested to hear what you learned with that conversation because I'd like to know too. Having someone like that in a leadership role for our entire country is borderline embarrassing. And the rest of the world, I feel like we're under a microscope. Like why, much like you said, like why did we let this happen? How did we get to this point? And if this is the kind of person that we're letting to lead our country, what are we doing? There's so much hate, and I always say this. I don't fully grasp the concept of politics as a whole. I don't consider myself very educated with all the things about politics, but the things that I do know, the things that I've studied, I want to say that the number one thing that I really care about is just being kind to people.
Mm.
And that is what's lacking. At the end of the day, I don't care, what you believe politically, but when we're focusing all of our attention on someone who is blatantly disrespecting pretty much every person, any type of human with a heart that doesn't have billions of dollars, that's problematic. And yeah, sorry, this it's got a little political here, but
No, no, I mean,
that's
sure, I'm Canadian,
it's
dude. I
part of
mean,
life. Yeah.
we watch it and we're just all like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
What's happening? It's not just you, though. It's worldwide, all of the
Mm,
world, China, Russia, Turkey. Like it happens, and it's an old story. The strong man is an old story. The narcissistic strong man who thinks he's come here to save us, it's an old story. And we have to get rid of it, right? Like,
yeah.
because the whole story behind that is cruelty, right?
Yeah.
And it's making people scared of each other and, playing one person off of another. And yeah, if we come from a place of kindness and empathy, we can change everything, and it doesn't mean that we need to lose our mind. Like I know like people who complain about woke talk about like all the enablism and all the, like there maybe was some overcorrection. Maybe things got kind of woke and very kind of like just high pitched there for a while. Like, yeah, okay.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
it wasn't illegitimate. It was just like, all right, that maybe that's the best way to like communicate or express that, like defund the police or something. It doesn't make any sense. Like we're
Right.
trying to do that, like, but
Yeah.
like being empathetic to what they're actually saying. It's like having a kid. I don't want it's like a one-on-one combination, but like if you have a kid and they're like having a tantrum, it's like you don't you can see what it is. If you're comparing, you stay calm and you're like, yeah, okay, you're
Yeah.
having a tantrum,
Yeah.
let's talk about this,
Let's talk about it.
right? And
Yeah.
bring it back. And I think, yeah, I think kindness and empathy are where it's at, but I think just like intelligence as well. Like we also seem to be lacking that these days. We really
Sure.
do, and I think
Absolutely.
we need to think clearly and logically
Hmm.
about things.
Yeah.
And like there's a lot of magical thinking out there, and I see that like in U.S. politics and stuff, and just the way the politicians take advantage of people because they're not thinking,
Yeah.
and that's an important thing. Like you would never even think about it, but like in school, people aren't taught how to think. But that was like in ancient Greece, if you were a student, it's like, okay, let's talk about logic,
Mhm.
how to figure something out. Let's sit down and like figure this thing out and use our minds.
Yeah.
And we don't teach that.
Yeah,
And
I think that is very important and it's definitely lacking even when I was in school. I just feel like education as a whole over time has just kind of fizzled out, I guess. We're not teaching the things that get us through life, if that makes sense. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but
oh, I
there,
agree.
yeah, there are definitely things that, everyone kind of turns away from and don't want to teach us. And there are things that we do need to learn, that we need to understand. And like I said, I'm not very educated when it comes to politics. And that's something that over the past 15, 20 years, I have tried to self-teach myself about politics. So
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, we don't really learn those things. We learn about the history, we learn about how we got to where we are and things like that. However,
It's Americans are funny. They all know about like the revolution,
yeah,
all that stuff, but it's like it's almost like a meme because it's disconnected from it. It's like, all right, so what happened was happening in France and England at the time and other geopolitics. It's like America doesn't exist by itself. It's
yeah,
it's it's part of this interconnected network, and that's the one thing I wish Americans would do is go and travel and
yeah,
just go and see the world and see that it's not like America and it's pretty great. Even
sure,
when they have their troubles, it's like, and the whole world can be great and also difficult with troubles. But like America's no different. I think the age of American exceptionalism, I hope, is over and just America, like the kind, good big brother, you know, that would be
yeah,
awesome because you guys are awesome when you do that.
yeah. I, I agree. Yeah, I think traveling's important. I unfortunately, personally, have not been out of the country other than Mexico, so I can't really.
Oh, it's
Um,
something. That's
yeah,
good.
yeah.
That's good.
I went to Canada when I was in high school, but I do like the idea of traveling. But I love to hear about other people's cultures and ways of thinking. And you being in Canada, you telling me about the ins and outs of what's going on up there and all these things that you're studying. Like I
Hmm.
said, I love it. I love hearing you talk about it. So it's something you're passionate about.
You have
mixed.
an open mind. You have an open mind. I think that's important. You know, that's all that traveling does is it just like it just forces you to open your mind because
Yeah,
suddenly you're in a different situation and you're having to cope and adapt. And it's like this, it's like learning a new language. It's just like all these new stress points in your brain actually make your brain better in many
yeah,
respects. But just being open to that, like, yeah, visiting, other cultural groups or like eating different types of food or, listening to different types of music and just not getting stuck in a groove, right? And
yeah.
I wish Americans, you guys got such a great culture. It's so diverse and like I've been to New Orleans, like I love that place. I
I do
think
too.
everyone in America should go to New Orleans if they want to have a cultural experience, go there. And then it's like
Absolutely.
that's not America.
I know.
That's,
I love that you said that though. A bunch of my friends and I went to New Orleans and I wasn't excited about going. I don't know why. It wasn't a place that was like on my list of places I really wanted to visit. But let me tell you, I loved every second of being there. It did feel like a completely different world. The history of the place, just the feel. It was so interesting to me, hearing about the different cultures and even people talking about the vampire culture there. My mind was blown. That's so interesting to me. Like, tell me more.
and
So
the world is like that.
I love that. I love
World
it.
is like that. Everywhere you go, it's like that. It's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. Well, I definitely need to get out more. I love hearing that you were young and you said $2,000 you took with you when you first did
Mhm.
your big travel. And you did for an entire year, you said?
Mhm. Yeah, I went
Wow.
India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran. I spent 2 months in Iran and
Wow.
Turkey and Sri Lanka. I mean, I traveled overland, so I was like hitchhiking and like in trains and yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah.
I love hearing that.
Iran, by the way, just so Americans know, fantastic people.
Yeah.
Everyone in America would love Iranian people. They're fantastic.
Awesome. I love to
So
hear that.
you can see past like the government and all that bullshit because that's not
Sure.
the people there. They're not
Yeah.
like that at all.
Well, it's good to know. I love it.
Yeah.
So you spent years studying traditional healing methods. How do you see, I believe it's Ayurveda? Is that how you say it?
Ayurveda.
Ayurveda. How do you see that evolving in the modern world?
Well, it already is. I mean, India is becoming a modern country. I think a lot of the way in which it's modernizing is probably not great because it's mostly kind of based on a capitalist mo industrial model, right? And I'm
Mm,
not, so it's kind of like, all right, you get instead of this like industrial drug manufacturing system, you've got this industrial herbal manufacturing system. It's better, I think. All not always, but I think generally it's better. Um, but like what I'm about is like people learning it for themselves because that's really what Ayurveda is. Ayurveda means the knowledge of life or the way of life or the divine science of life. It's like it's a way of like looking at the world. It gives you a model to look at the world and analyze it from a way that you have never looked at it before. But a way that really once you learn it, you're like, wow, it really connects with your like your own computer inside. Like it's a piece of software that's just like it just opens up because our software isn't like a computer. It's not like binary. It's this feeling organic machine, right? And we feel things and it gives us information. It's like it's hot, it's cold, it's wet, it's dry, it's heavy, it's light. We feel those things and they output a really sophisticated response, like the way the human body is able to move and all the things we're able to do with our bodies. Like it's like even you look at like the way scientists have discovered things, it's discover things in dreams or like it's sensory experiences. It's a part of how we discover and interact with the world. And so Ayurveda gives you a model to do that, like to take advantage of your own biological machine here, you know.
mhm.
And I see that knowledge spreading, hopefully, and people becoming more aware of that and it as a system helping and supporting other ways and approaches because one of the lovely things about Ayurveda is that it's very adaptable to anything like you can it's not a religious thing like obviously it's associated with Hindus and the Hindu faith but
Mm,
it's used by Muslims it can be Christians I mean atheists like no one needs to believe anything to for it to be effective and very profound. Um, so it's a way of life, and so I'm just like I just love to share it with people because it makes so much sense and it brings so much less suffering because that's really the goal. That's the goal of Ayurveda, and I think the goal of life. I don't know if there's any goal of life or there's any meaning of life, except that if you can alleviate suffering to some degree, then I think your life has had meaning.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you can write books and like whatever, do all these different things, but like go fly to the moon back. But like, how does it measurably improve the world of the universe? Because it's not just this isn't just an experience for me that I'm having. I'm obviously it's important to me, but it's also about my impact on others.
Well, I will say I really started listening to your podcast not too long ago, and you definitely made an impact on me listening to what you have to say. Even just this little interview we got going on right now. I really like the way that you're explaining things, sheds a lot of light on things. You're doing a great job, and uh, yeah, I know there's probably a lot of people out there who will agree, who are listening to it, that either stumble across your podcast or even maybe they watched Fear and they're like, oh, I wonder what this guy's up to, and they're like, oh, this is
Yeah,
interesting, so
maybe.
yeah,
Yeah, if
yeah,
it can help people, then my objective is obtained.
no, you're killing it then. You're killing it. So I just have two more questions left for you.
Okay.
Do you believe that healing is more about the physical body, or is it equally or more about the mind and spirit?
Well, as per Ayurveda, the physical universe that we exist within arises from consciousness. This is the key principle of Ayurveda. Everything is rooted in consciousness. Consciousness is the absence of materiality. Like there's nothing, you can't describe it. It's like what I talked about earlier about something you can't understand because it's not understandable. And so that's consciousness. And from consciousness, which we're experiencing right now, we're watching it,
Mm.
it gives rise to this body, it gives rise to the world, essentially. Like the world awakens through our consciousness. If your consciousness wasn't there, would the world exist? How would you know? You don't have consciousness.
Yeah,
Consciousness is essentially interfacing with this and creating. We know that scientifically that your brain is actually creating like a story, a narrative about what's happening because you're not getting all the data, you know? Like it's
yeah.
just like making little snapshots and stitching them together, and that's reality, but that's not reality. We don't even see it. And then with our human senses, we don't even see everything that's possible to see. So, um, so what was the question? I went on a tangent
No,
there.
you're good. It was just, do you believe that healing is more about the physical body,
Oh,
or is it
yes.
equally about the mind and
Yes.
spirit?
Yeah, so I think my answer is evident in
You're
that
good.
that
Yeah,
but the thing is you don't ignore the body.
sure.
And so, the body when it tells you there's something going wrong, like it's important to be really listening, you know. And another little tip for men out there in particular, men seem to be really disconnected from their body such that they'll ignore shit and they'll turn into infections and like, amputate their toe or something like listen to your body when it's telling you that something's wrong. Like you don't have to get freaked out about it or paranoid about it, but it's like when you're driving and a little light goes on, it's like, all right, I should probably get that checked out next time,
Yeah, yeah.
right now, or like, it can range in severity, but like, so it's this, we're in this feedback loop, right? Like consciousness, materiality, it feeds back to us. And so it's not separate. It's all interdependent. So I don't know if it's one is more important than the other. They are.
It's all about the connection, right? That's a great answer. You definitely summarized that up pretty well. Last question I have for you.
Okay.
If you could give one piece of advice to someone interested in holistic health, what would it be?
There's so many little key things. We're so dysregulated as a species in the Western world right now. Like we're just really out of alignment with the natural rhythm and the cycle. And so much of like our psychology and our behavior is actually derived from our relationship with the environment, like the rising and setting of the sun and darkness and light cycles and eating cycles and seasonal cycles. And so it's really important to be aware of those cycles and to observe the changes in your body. And one key thing I say just generally I see a lot of people don't do, and it makes a really big difference, is to sometime between like say 9 and noon, have yourself like a good breakfast that is rich in fatty and protein foods and lots of veggies. Like make it one of your biggest meals of the day. And then just go on that. And then maybe have another secondary meal sometime before it gets dark, like a smaller meal. Breakfast like a king, dine like a pauper. And front loading that nutrition will help to create a neurostabilizing effect. You deal with stress a lot more easily. Your blood sugar's not crashing. You're not going to be snacking on stuff that you know you shouldn't eat. But I get it. If your blood sugar's crashing, there's a donut there. It's like I'm eating that donut, right? So don't put yourself in that position. And if you eat this way for breakfast, it could be vegetarian or non-vegetarian. It's fatty, it's protein, it's lots of veggies. You eat something like that, and it'll carry you for most of the day, and then you'll have a nice meal. And you'll eat twice a day. And as per Ayurveda, that's the recommended frequency of eating. And if you eat that way consistently, you have a greater chance of having good, healthy metabolism, good elimination, good digestion, and just good energy.
Well, that sounds like some great advice to me, so I
Okay.
appreciate that. Well, Todd, hey, I really appreciate you taking the time to
You're welcome.
not only talk about where you're at now, but kind of talk for a few minutes about where you were before. And I really appreciate what you're doing. I think the passion shows in your work that you're doing with your podcast, your books, your teachings. Keep doing the good stuff out there because it's definitely very admirable, for sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
And thank you for your curiosity.
for
That's
sure.
that's
Yeah,
that's a really important thing. And so, yeah, thanks
cool.
for taking the time to talk to me.
Awesome. Well, Todd, you have a great night. Good luck with
Yeah.
everything. And
Thank you.
we'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Have a good one.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.